I'm going to play a little melody, and I kind of need your help in this one. So you'll have to really turn your ears on and listen. There's a little melody that children all over the world, in India and Africa and China and America, know. It's a little melody. It goes like this. And on the playground, sometimes we sing, na-na-na, boo-boo, na-na-na, boo-boo, you stepped in the mud puddle. Well, you'll need to remember that as we tell, and I mean it, we are going to tell the story of...
I also stepped in a bunch of mud at recess. Me too. Me too.
This is the story of the king's secret.
There once was a king who was very powerful. He had lots and lots of money, lots and lots of servants, lots and lots of fancy clothes. He lived in a big castle, and everyone did what the king said to do. The king had everything he could want, except a peaceful mind. The king's mind was troubled and never at peace because the king had a secret. The king's secret was this. The king's ears were not like any of our ears. The king's ears didn't grow from the sides of his head. The king's ears grew from the top of his head, and they hung down by the sides of his head like the ears of a goat. The king was afraid if anyone saw his ears, they would tease him and say, "Funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears." That's your part. Help out if you want. Go. Funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears. So every morning, before the king called for the servants to dress him in his nice clothes, the king would go over to his mirror, take his brush and his comb, brush and comb his hair back to the back of his head, take his ears, fold them down over the top of his head, and then take his crown and squeeze the crown down over the ears. Then the crown would be on so tight, no one could see the ears. No one knows about my ears. He would call the servants. No one would see his ears except, well, the royal barber had to know about the king's ears. Because every so often the royal barber would come and trim the king's hair. Snip, 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 and have to trim around the ears. The king had told the barber, "If you tell anyone about my ears, I'll throw you in the dungeon for the rest of your life." The barber didn't want to wind up in the dungeon, so the barber had kept a secret for years and years and years until one day, boom, the barber died. The king had to get a new barber. Oh dear, what am I going to do? I have to get a new royal barber. Otherwise my hair will grow down so long it'll get tangled up in my shoelaces. Then the king had an idea. So the king sent a messenger throughout the land calling, "Hair yay, hair yay, hair yay! Anyone who wants to be the new royal barber, come to the castle at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning." Well, at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, 7 would-be royal barbers turned up. Each of them had a piece of paper rolled up. That piece of paper was a letter. People had written saying, "Oh, this barber cuts hair really well," and recommending that barber. Well, the first barber came before the king. The king looked at the letter. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, this one cuts hair well enough. "Soldiers and servants, out of the room," commanded the king. So everybody but the barber and the king left. The soldiers and servants closed the doors. Only the barber and the king was in the throne room. And the king said to the barber, "Look very closely at me and tell me, is there anything unusual you see?" While the barber looked at the king reached up and took off his crown, boop, letting his ears flop down. Boogity, 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 boogity. The barber saw the king's ears. Holy ravioli! The king has the ears of a goat. But the king doesn't seem to know. Wants me to say if I've seen anything unusual. "Oh, unusually royal is how you look to me today, your highness," said the barber. Well, the king knew the barber had seen his ears and knew the barber wasn't telling the truth. And so the king said, "Liar, you haven't told me the truth. I can't trust you to be the royal barber. To the dungeon with you." So the king hid his ears under his crown really quick and called the soldiers. They tied and gagged the barber and threw him in the dungeon.
Awesome.
The next would-be royal barber came in, and the same thing happened. It happened again and again and again and again until the seventh would-be royal barber came before the king. This one was a young woman. Her name was Opal.
That's you.
She had a smile as bright as a beautiful shining star. And she had an imagination that was full of wonderful ideas. And she could make poems and songs and rhymes just for the fun of it. If you got to be the royal barber, you got a nice place to stay. You got plenty of money. You got to work only one day every other week or so, because the king didn't have hair that grew very, very fast. And so Opal thought, well, this would be a nice job for me. Yeah, I could have this job, and then I could play with my friends. I could read books from the library. I could dance and sing and have fun all the time I wanted. Well, she came before the king. The king read her letter. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, this one cuts hair well like the other ones did. Might as well get this over with. Soldiers, servants, out of the room, like the king commanded before. When only Opal and the king stood in the throne room, the king looked at her for the seventh time and took off his crown and said, "Look very closely at me and tell me, is there anything unusual you see?" His ears flopped down. She looked at the king. She enjoyed reading and hearing about fun things, and she had been studying laughter yoga. It was kind of contagious. Somebody starts laughing, everybody laughs too. She began to laugh, and she laughed so hard she just about wet her pants. Oh, and then an idea bubbled right out from somewhere she didn't even think about. Oh, funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears. Sing it with me, go. Funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears. Oh, she was laughing, holding her belly until the king bellowed, "Silence." She became silent. She looked at the king, and the king was not happy. "You made fun of my ears. How dare you make fun of me? It hurts my feelings." "I'll put you in the dungeon for the rest of your life." And the king was about to call the soldiers and throw her in the dungeon when she said, "Your Highness, please, hang on a second. I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sad that I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to. Had I thought for just a moment, I never would have said those words, and I promise, cross my heart, I'll never say them again. Please give me another chance." Well, there was kind of a rule in the land that if someone does something that they regret, they don't want to do again, and they feel sad about it, and they say sorry, and they say, "Yes, I did it, and I won't do it again," you kind of got to give them another chance. And the king knew about that, so the king said, "Very well, since you apologized, and you admitted what you did, you said you won't do it again, and you were the only one who told me the truth of what you saw, I'll give you one chance to be the royal barber. One chance is all you get. If you keep my ears a secret and never tell anyone, you can be the royal barber. You can have all the benefits, the nice clothes and the place to stay and so on. However, if you ever tell anyone, you and whoever you tell will wind up in the dungeon for the rest of your life. That's my offer. If you don't accept my offer, you wind up in the dungeon for the rest of your life. So what is your choice?" Opal thought, what choice have I? Okay, I'll be the royal barber. And so, boom, she swallowed the secret down deep inside. And every other week or so, she'd bring her comb and her scissors, and she'd trim the king's hair. And life went along pretty well. Except, there are things about each of us that is kind of our own business. Like, I like pink. And I like short hair. And I like ginger candy. And I like chocolate chip pizza. You know, things that just
just matter to us, and that's okay. And there are things that some people kind of threaten you about, like, if you don't go over there and do what I tell you, I'm going to push you down in the mud. And that's not such a good idea. And when somebody says that, it's not such a good idea to keep that inside and keep it a secret. And this secret didn't feel good inside of Opal. It started to get bigger, and bigger, and bigger. And she realized, I got to get this secret out, otherwise I'm going to burst. She saw a boy on the way to the library to check out some books. She said, "Psst, hey, would you like to know a secret?" He said, yeah. And then she remembered what happened. If the king found out, she and the boy would both go in the dungeon. You probably got to get to the library quick while they're still open. I'll see you later. Bye. She saw a girl on the way to dance at a party. She said, "Psst, psst, would you like to know a secret?" And the girl said, "Why, yes, I would." And then she remembered what would happen if she told. They both would go in the, I don't want to make you late for warm-up and stuff. I'll see you later. Got to go by. But I got to get the secret out. What am I going to? She had an idea. She went to the tool shed behind the castle. She got a shovel. She went to the top of the hill next to the castle, and she started digging. You can help with this part. Shh, foom, shh, foom, shh, foom, shh, foom, shh, foom. She dug the hole so deep she could barely climb out. She tossed the shovel out. She scrambled out of the hole. She leaned over the edge of the hole, and she sang the secret back down in the hole. Ready? Go. Funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears. She picked up the shovel and she put the dirt back. Go. Shoop, 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 shoop. Pooh. She sighed. The secret was out. She hadn't told anybody. She buried the secret under all that dirt. She went and put the shovel away thinking, I'm safe, I'm safe. Oh, yes, I'm safe. And she might have been. Except after she put the secret in the hole, but before she covered it with the dirt, flying overhead had been a bird. In the bird's beak had been a twig. Dangling from the twig had been an acorn. As the bird flew over the hole, the acorn broke free, fell to the bottom of the hole, was buried right next to the secret. The dirt was rich, there was plenty of rain, plenty of sunshine. Before long, growing on top of the hill next to the castle was a nice little tree. One day a musician happened by who played a kind of a flute. But that flute hadn't been given much love or very good care, and it didn't sound very good anymore. Ooh! It gives me a headache just to thinking about playing it. I can't play this flute anymore. The musician put the flute away, figuring I'll have to recycle that one. I got to find myself a tree from which I can carve a new flute. Oh, that little tree on top of the hill next to the castle. It's just the right size, said the musician. So the musician climbed the tree, cut off a limb, carved out a flute. And when he played the flute, it would only play one tune. That was really strange, and what was even stranger, the flute had a voice of its own, and it sang the song about the king's ears that went, go, funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears, funny, funny goat's ears. Oh, I can't play this flute. I couldn't sell it oh dear. I better cut myself another limb and carve out a new flute. The musician tossed the flute down, cut off another limb, carved out a new flute. Same thing happened. It kept happening again and again till he couldn't reach any more limbs, and there was a whole pile of flutes. Oh, I couldn't even sell them for a penny. I'll just give them away, said the musician. So he picked them all up, and he went down into the town surrounding the castle. He gave one to each girl, and each boy, each teacher, and each librarian, each mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Pretty soon, everybody in the land had learned the melody and the song, and everybody was singing in their great big voices. Go, funny, funny goes here, the king has got it.
Funny, funny goats. Ears, 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 ears. The singing echoed back and forth in through the castle windows. Reached the king's ears under his crown. The king was not amused. The king said, "Bring the royal barber to me." Well, Opal had heard the singing. When the soldiers came to get her, she knew what the king wanted. Her knees were knocking together when she came into the throne room. The king saw her and said, you're responsible. The whole world is singing about my ears. It's horribly embarrassing. You'll wind up beneath the dungeon for the rest of your life for this. And the king was about to order the soldiers to put her under the dungeon when she said, "Wait, please, your majesty. Just hear my story." "Make it fast," said the king. And so Opal told the story of how the king's secret had been inside, and it had gotten bigger and bigger. She almost told it to a boy, but didn't. Almost told it to a girl, but didn't. You gotta believe me, your highness. I didn't break my promise. I didn't tell it to anybody. That was what I promised I would do. I just buried this secret in a hole I dug in the top of the hill. She pointed to the castle window at the hill. You know where that, well, there's a tree growing now where I buried the secret, that one with no limbs close to the ground. I don't know how that happened, but you got to believe me, please. Well, the king remembered when Opal had come with her letter and had gotten the job of being the royal barber, how she was the one would-be royal barber who had told the truth. So he said, "Well, since you told the truth that first time we met, I'll give you one chance to prove you're telling the truth this time. We'll go to the top of the hill, you and me and the soldiers. We'll cut down the tree and dig. If, as you say, you buried the secret, it'll be at the bottom of the hole. If it's there, you may go free. If not, underneath the dungeon is where you will be." She was hoping against hope. Trying to breathe deep. The king got the soldiers. They got axes and shovels. They all went to the top of the hill. The soldiers cut down the tree and set it aside to make something out of. Then they started digging. Boom. Help me out. Boom. And they kept digging. Boom. And they kept digging. Boom. And they kept digging. Boom. Well, they had dug way, 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 way past where she had been able to dig, and they kept digging and digging and digging and digging until finally the last soldier pitched out the last little teaspoon of dirt. Zip! Pop! And just then, all of a sudden, out of the hole flew Opal's voice singing one more time. "Funny, funny goat's ears, the king has goat's ears. Funny, funny goat's ears." Whew. She breathed a sigh of relief. And the king thought, well, everyone knows about them. I might as well be comfortable and stop having these headaches. And so for the first time anywhere outside the castle, the king reached up and took off his crown, boop, letting his ears flop down. Boogity, 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 boogity. Now what the king hadn't noticed was all the commotion on top of the hill outside the castle had attracted the attention of people for miles around. So they were all standing around wondering, why is everybody up on top of that? Holy socks. The song is true. The king has the ears of a goat. But they're not funny. No. Look at the way the sunlight shines on them. Look at the way they kind of, like wings, they kind of float in the breeze. We're not going to tease our king. No way. That would hurt his feelings. We're going to give the king compliments on his ears. Well, the king had a special crown made so he wouldn't have to have headaches, and his ears could kind of float in the breeze. And people complimented him and said, "King, your highness, your ears look beautiful today." "Why, thank you very much," said the king. And from then on, whenever the king had a really difficult decision to make, like, well, shall we celebrate Shandan's birthday at home or in school or both, he would sit and gently stroke his ears. And from then on, whenever anyone else had a really challenging decision to make, like, well, shall I be friend to girls and boys or boys and girls, they would sit and gently stroke their ears too. And that's the story of what used to be the king's secret. Thanks for helping tell it. Good job.